What if your weakness isn't from what's happening around you, but from how untrained your mind has become in facing it? The Stoics understood that true strength has nothing to do with physical force or public confidence. It begins and ends within. Epictetus, a man born into slavery, became one of the strongest thinkers in human history, not because of privilege, but because he mastered his inner world. We suffer not from events, but from our judgment about them, he taught. And that judgment, the way we frame what happens to us, is the seed of either weakness or strength. To become mentally strong, the Stoic doesn't chase control of the world. They sharpen control over themselves. They draw a line, unshakably clear, between what they can influence and what they must accept. Their mind becomes a fortress because they build it brick by brick through discipline, presence, and philosophical practice. In modern life, this kind of strength is rare. We're conditioned to react, to complain, to fear uncertainty, to spiral when plans fail. But the Stoic pauses. They assess. They choose. Not the loudest voice, but the calmest. Not the easiest response, but the most virtuous one. Marcus Aurelius, ruling over a chaotic empire, reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. This is not theory. It is survival strategy for the soul." It means you do not need perfect conditions to be at peace. You need a trained mind that refuses to be owned by circumstances. Strength is found in restraint, in awareness, in choosing not to be shaken by what is temporary. When insulted, the Stoic chooses silence. When wronged, they choose to remain unmoved. When pain comes, they endure it not with bitterness, but with composure. That's not suppression. It's power. Real power. The kind that isn't granted but grown. Every moment is an opportunity to reinforce this strength, not by controlling everything, but by mastering what's yours, your thoughts, your emotions, your response. And once that is done, once your mind becomes your stronghold, there is no failure, insult, loss, or fear that can ever dominate you again. Because you are not ruled by the world. You are ruled by reason. The Stoic path to mental strength begins with mastering the moment between stimulus and action, a narrow space in which freedom lives, where the untrained react and the wise respond. Epictetus taught that events themselves are not the cause of our suffering, but rather the interpretations we attach to them. And so the Stoic disciplines the mind to observe rather than absorb, to create space between what happens and what they do next. In a modern world flooded with noise, provocation, and emotional triggers, this is no small task, but it is the very heart of Stoic practice. The mentally strong do not rush to judgment, nor do they let anger dictate their speech or fear govern their decisions. Instead, they anchor themselves in reason. When insulted, they consider whether the insult reveals anything true. When challenged, they ask what virtue is required in this moment. When overwhelmed, they return to breath, to clarity, to conscious control. Reaction is instinctual. Response is chosen. And in that choice lies the beginning of power. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that other people's actions are beyond his command, but how he answered them was always within his grasp. This internal sovereignty is what sets the Stoic apart. They may live in the same world, but they do not live in the same state of mind. While others are tossed by emotion, the Stoic remains steady, not because they are cold, but because they are focused. Their goal is not revenge, domination, or validation. It is alignment with virtue. And so every confrontation becomes a chance to practice patience. Every setback becomes a space to train composure. Every disruption becomes a decision. Will I act from habit or from principle? The Stoic chooses principle, not for applause, but for peace. And that peace is not fragile. It is forged. It is the product of deliberate restraint, repeated reflection, and the constant reminder that no one can control their mind unless they first learn to slow it down. The mentally strong do not explode. They do not beg. They do not break under the weight of reaction. They respond clearly, calmly, and with intention, because they know that in mastering the space between what happens and what follows, they unlock the only control that truly matters. At the foundation of Stoic mental strength is one clear distinction: the line between what you can control and what you cannot. Epictetus called this the first task of the philosopher, and without mastering it, the mind remains in a state of confusion, pulled in every direction by things it was never meant to govern. The Stoic, however, sees clearly. They do not spend energy wishing the weather were different, resenting the actions of others, or fearing future outcomes that lie beyond their command. They focus entirely on what is within: thoughts, actions, choices, character. This is not passivity, it is precision. It is the decision to conserve mental strength for where it will make a difference. When a Stoic faces rejection, they do not ask, "Why did this happen to me?" They ask, "How can I respond with integrity?" When illness strikes, they do not collapse into despair. They use it as a chance to practice endurance. When fortune turns, they do not curse the sky. They prepare, adapt, and hold fast to their values. This separation is power. In modern life, we are overwhelmed not because life is inherently unmanageable, but because we try to control everything. We obsess over what others think. We worry about events we can't predict. We replay the past, trying to rewrite it in our minds. But none of these things bend to our will, and the more we try to force them, the more powerless we feel. The Stoic sees this trap and refuses to enter it. They turn their gaze inward and ask, "What is mine to shape?" And they work on that with patience and discipline. This mindset is not about resignation, it's about liberation. You are not responsible for the world, but you are responsible for how you meet it. That is your domain, and when you take ownership of that domain, you begin to experience a different kind of strength, one that doesn't depend on success, approval, or luck. It depends only on how you think, speak, and act in the present moment. That is the work of a Stoic. That is where true strength lives, not in external control, but in internal clarity. The mentally strong have stopped trying to rule the world and started ruling themselves. The Stoic does not merely endure hardship, they convert it. Marcus Aurelius, facing plagues, betrayal, and war, wrote the words that have become a cornerstone of mental strength. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not motivational fluff. It is strategic transformation. Adversity is not the end of strength, but its beginning. The Stoic mind sees obstacles not as dead ends, but as raw material. Pain becomes a test of endurance. Delay becomes a lesson in patience. Criticism becomes an opportunity to practice humility. Every challenge holds a hidden virtue waiting to be drawn out. And while others are asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the Stoic is already asking, "What is this training in me?" This is the mindset shift that separates the mentally weak from the mentally strong. Most people spend adversity in resistance, complaining, blaming, hoping for escape. But the Stoic spends it in refinement. They use it to grow, to build, to strip away what is non-essential. The obstacle is not an interruption. It is the curriculum. In modern life, this philosophy is vital. We face daily setbacks, from broken plans to emotional betrayal, from illness to failure. But instead of drowning in self-pity or victimhood, the Stoic asks, "What can I build from this?" and then begins the work. Adversity becomes fuel, not fire. The mentally strong do not wait for easy conditions to demonstrate their strength. They reveal it in the middle of discomfort. They sharpen themselves on difficulty. Like a blacksmith striking metal, each blow of hardship tempers the mind, strengthens its edge, and shapes it into something formidable. The Stoic does not just bounce back, they rise better. And in this transformation, they build a kind of confidence that cannot be faked, because it has been tested. They do not hope for life to be smooth, they prepare to meet it when it's not. This is not optimism, it is discipline, not fantasy, it is force. The mentally strong learn to say, I do not wish it were easier. I wish to grow stronger. And with that, every obstacle becomes an ally. Every wound becomes wisdom, every hardship becomes a reason to rise. The Stoic does not become mentally strong by avoiding discomfort. They become strong by practicing it. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, would regularly sleep on the ground, eat the simplest food, and wear rough clothing, not out of deprivation, but out of preparation. Set aside a certain number of days, he wrote, during which you shall be content with the scantiest fare, and ask yourself, is this the condition I feared? This was not self-punishment, it was training. The Stoic understands that when comfort becomes a habit, the mind softens, but when we occasionally choose hardship, we remember our resilience. Voluntary discomfort sharpens the will, clears the mind, and teaches us that what we fear is often survivable. In modern life, where we are surrounded by convenience, luxury, and endless distraction, discomfort feels intolerable. We dread hunger, silence, cold, criticism. But the Stoic welcomes small doses of discomfort not to suffer but to strengthen their tolerance. They fast not to lose weight but to prove they can go without. They rise early not to impress others but to rule their impulses. They face rejection not to seek pain, but to grow immune to its sting. Through these deliberate trials, they break their dependency on ease. The mind becomes flexible, the will becomes stable, the character becomes durable. Most people only find out what they can endure when life forces them to. The Stoic doesn't wait, they rehearse, they prepare, and when real adversity arrives, they are not surprised, they are ready. Voluntary discomfort teaches the mind that survival does not depend on circumstance, but on inner fortitude. It reveals how little we truly need to function, to focus, to persist. And in that realization, fear begins to lose its grip. The mentally strong are not obsessed with comfort because they have proven to themselves they can endure discomfort. This gives them freedom, the freedom to act, to speak, to live with boldness, knowing that if everything is taken from them, the core remains. That core is discipline, courage, and the knowledge that suffering is bearable when met with a trained mind. So choose discomfort, occasionally, intentionally, and use it not to punish but to prepare. For in those moments, you are not suffering, you are becoming unshakable. To become mentally strong, the Stoic does not just manage the outer world. They discipline the voice within. That quiet, constant narrator inside your mind shapes everything. Your confidence, your fear, your clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts." This was no abstract musing. It was a strategy. The Stoic knows that a mind left unchecked becomes its own enemy. It feeds on doubt, replays failure, and magnifies fear. But a mind directed with intention becomes a fortress. And the cornerstone of that fortress is the inner voice. While most people are unaware of how they speak to themselves, the Stoic listens closely. They ask, is this thought useful? Is it true? Does it reflect virtue? If not, it is discarded. This is not toxic positivity, it is trained realism. When failure comes, the inner voice doesn't say, "I'm worthless." It says, "What can I learn from this?" When fear whispers, "You can't handle this," the Stoic responds, "Let's find out." And when temptation arises, they remind themselves, ease is not the goal. Strength is. The inner voice becomes a coach, not a critic, a compass, not a cage. In modern life, we are bombarded with noise from every direction. But the most dangerous noise is the one we never examine, our self-talk. It can sabotage your day before it begins. It can make minor setbacks feel like personal failures. But the Stoic takes command of this voice not through suppression but through redirection. They rewrite the internal script every day, just as Marcus did in his meditations. Mental strength is not about never having negative thoughts. It's about not being ruled by them. You will doubt, you will worry, you will falter. But the inner voice will decide whether you stay there or rise. The Stoic chooses to rise. They use reason to override panic. They use virtue to override ego. They use clarity to override confusion. In mastering this inner voice, they become independent from praise, immune to criticism, and grounded in truth. Your greatest battles will always be silent, and the strongest warriors are those who win inside, before the world even knows a war was fought. The Stoic does not depend on motivation because they know that feelings are fleeting, but values are firm. Seneca warned that those who wait for inspiration to act are slaves to chance. The mentally strong do not ask, "Do I feel like it today?" They ask, "What must I do today to become who I want to be?" This is the essence of Stoic discipline, showing up regardless of mood, consistency over emotion, action over impulse. In a world obsessed with excitement and hype, the Stoic chooses routine. Not because they are dull, but because they are focused. They know that greatness is not forged in moments of passion, but in the steady, repeated decisions made in silence, without praise, without reward, and often without visible progress. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to rise and do his duty, even when he was tired, frustrated, or tempted to quit. Why? Because the purpose of life to the Stoic is not to feel good, but to do good. And that good is only possible with a stable foundation. Imagine a tree that only stands tall when the weather is pleasant. It would not survive the seasons. The Stoic trains to endure all seasons, especially the difficult ones, and that strength is built through repetition. You rise when you'd rather rest. You speak truth when it would be easier to stay quiet. You reflect when it would be easier to numb. You practice virtue again and again until it becomes who you are, not what you do when it's convenient. Mental strength is forged in repetition, not bursts of inspiration. It is the act of showing up when the world gives you every reason not to. And with every repetition, you build a mind that does not rely on perfect conditions to remain composed. While others burn out chasing highs, the Stoic remains steady in discipline. This is the quiet power of consistency. It is unglamorous. It is often invisible, but it is unstoppable. The mentally strong do not rise and fall with their mood. They rise and fall with their values, and in that they become something rare, dependable in chaos, unwavering in pressure, and quietly unstoppable in the long run. The Stoic does not measure strength by results, but by effort aligned with virtue, because they know that outcomes lie outside their command, while intention and action are fully within. Epictetus taught, "Do not seek to have events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do." This is not passive surrender, it is radical mental freedom. The mentally strong do not tie their peace to whether things go right. They tie it to whether they acted rightly. In modern life, we are conditioned to obsess over outcomes, approval, success, recognition. We chase perfection, expecting control over every detail. But the Stoic sees this as a trap. When you attach your worth to things beyond your control, you invite anxiety, disappointment, and emotional instability. The Stoic releases the outcome not because it doesn't matter, but because it cannot be owned. You can prepare, speak, lead, and love with care, but the reaction, the result, the reward is never guaranteed. And to stake your peace on that is to give away your freedom. Instead, the Stoic measures success by one question. Did I act with integrity? If the answer is yes, the result becomes secondary. This mindset is not defeatist, it is empowering. It frees the mind to focus fully on the process. It eliminates fear of failure because even failure becomes a noble act if done with courage and discipline. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he constantly reminded himself not to desire applause but to do his work as nature intended. If it is the right thing to do, do it, he wrote. Let the outcome follow as it may. The mentally strong understand that clinging to results breeds tension, fear, and distraction. Detachment, on the other hand, brings clarity, composure, and sustained energy. You perform better not when you're obsessed with the finish line, but when you're fully present in each step. The Stoic gives their best, knowing the rest is not theirs to hold. This is not weakness. It is mastery. It is doing your part with full commitment, then letting go without regret or resentment. When you detach from the outcome, you reclaim the mind. You walk with peace, not pressure. And you rise not because of what happens, but because of how you chose to meet it. To the Stoic, true strength is silent. It does not seek applause, validation, or recognition because it is grounded in internal standards, not external approval. Marcus Aurelius warned himself, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. This is not detachment from connection, it is detachment from dependence. The mentally strong do not need praise to continue, nor are they broken by criticism. They act out of principle, not popularity. In modern life, we are surrounded by likes, comments, feedback loops that reinforce a dangerous idea that we only matter if others notice us. But the Stoic rejects this. They know that what is praised is often superficial, temporary, or misunderstood, and what is truly good often goes unnoticed or even resisted. So they stop asking, will others see this? And start asking, is this right? They perform small acts of courage that no one applauds. They choose honesty when it would be easier to lie. They stay kind when cruelty is expected. These choices are not performed for an audience. They are performed for character. Praise is not poison, but dependence on it is. Once your self-worth hinges on someone else's opinion, you have lost control of your peace. And the Stoic fights for that control above all. This doesn't mean they ignore feedback or become arrogant. They reflect, they adjust, but they are not ruled by applause. When complimented, they receive it with humility, but they do not inflate. When criticized, they examine it with calm, but they do not collapse. They remain anchored. This is mental strength. To know who you are so deeply that the noise of the crowd cannot shake it. Seneca reminded his readers that reputation is a shadow. What matters is substance, and substance is built in private, refined in silence, and revealed in action. The Stoic works not to be admired, but to be consistent, not to be noticed, but to be aligned with reason. They find joy not in public affirmation, but in private clarity. And that clarity cannot be taken, because it was never borrowed from someone else. Praise fades, criticism passes, but virtue, lived daily and quietly, endures. The mentally strong don't wait to be told they are good. They act in a way that makes external opinion irrelevant. The Stoic does not fear death. They prepare for it, reflect on it, and use it as a lens to sharpen every moment of life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This isn't morbid. It's liberating. Memento mori, remember you must die, is not about obsession with endings, but about alignment with purpose. The mentally strong carry this awareness not as a burden, but as a compass. It reminds them that time is finite, that distractions are expensive, and that delaying virtue is the slowest form of self-destruction. In modern life, we behave as though time is infinite. We scroll, complain, compare. We postpone love, avoid risk, and numb our discomfort, all in the false comfort that tomorrow is guaranteed. But the Stoic rejects this illusion. They use the awareness of mortality to refine the present. If this were your last day, would you waste it in pettiness? If this hour were your final moment, would you act out of ego? The mentally strong ask these questions not to live in fear, but to live in clarity. Death strips away the inessential. It reveals what matters. And in doing so, it strengthens the will to act now, to speak truth now, to choose virtue now. Seneca wrote that life is long if we know how to use it, and the Stoic uses it deliberately. They do not hoard time. They invest it. They do not seek to extend life at all costs. They seek to live it with meaning, regardless of length. This mindset frees them from hesitation. It helps them let go of grudges, abandon perfectionism, and stop waiting for some distant moment to begin. They have already begun. And they live each day ready to finish well, not with regret, but with acceptance. To remember death is not to be haunted, it is to be awakened. And those who are truly awake do not waste time. They do not fear the end because they have respected the middle. The mentally strong do not wait for the right time to live. They know it has already arrived. And when their final breath comes, they will not grasp, but exhale, knowing they used every breath before it with purpose.